Not only do we have breakdancing in the game, but if you actually get up there, this is the teen area where they hang out. This person does some beatboxing up there.
Oh my
Excellent.
God.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of PlayStation Underground. You got Tim and Kristen here.
Hey.
And we're joined by Lee Petty and Kevin Johnson from Double Fine Productions. Lee is creative director on Rad, and Kevin is the producer, and we're going to have a rad time. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, so where are we right now? The world looks kind of beautiful, but it looks a little worn down in other ways.
We
Like,
got
what's
Kevin
going
on
on?
the sticks. We're playing on a PS4 Pro.
Yes. So, Rad is a game set in a post-apocalyptic world. So,
Double the apocalypse.
right? I mean, we're double fine, so we need a double apocalypse.
Oh,
just
right.
otherwise, yeah.
So on brand.
And it's a roguelite game, so every game you play is procedurally generated except for the town where you start, and your character is a member of this town, and it's kind of the hub that you can kind of go to between each of the levels, and it's built on the ruins of an old shopping mall, and it's appropriate. And all of our player characters are these sort of teenage volunteers in the town who have been remade by the town elder, who's that character with the purple robe over
Okay,
there.
that ominous gentleman over there.
Yeah. So he's this kind of mysterious character who kind of knows a lot about the world and about the two eras of the civilizations that have come before you. So there's the first apocalypse, which was referred to as the Ancients in our game world, and that's a sort of nuclear Armageddon that happened in the 80s. And then hundreds of years later, another civilization rose up called the Menders, who tried to reconstruct the world, to try and mend it, to try and heal it, and they suddenly disappeared.
I love that breakdancing was essential to the culture.
Not only do we have breakdancing in the game, but if you actually get up there, this is the teen area where they hang out. This person does some beatboxing up there.
Oh my
Excellent.
God.
Let's see if we can.
I mean, what better place to
Yeah.
beatbox than on a broken down bus?
It's
Love it.
true. So the town has this sort of area where the sort of adults hang out, and then out in this parking lot, we call it the Lost Boys area. Out in this parking lot, this is where the teens hang out to try and be rebellious. But of course, they're 50 feet from the rest of the town. But
it's symbolic, really.
Yeah.
It's the thought that counts. So is there? You end up coming back to the hub, sort of in between runs, as you were, and so is it? Are we ready just to jump out into the world and start going, or is there some preparation that would be helpful here?
Yeah, I think the important part just to note is that you start off as this sort of normal teen character, relatively normal in the strange world, but you've been remade so that you can absorb the rads or the toxins from the world, and we're gonna randomly mutate. So every time you play, we're gonna randomly mutate.
Okay.
And so we're gonna go and jump into. You're gonna take one of these transference gates that the Menders have left behind,
cool.
and this will take you to a random place in the world.
Nice.
And so radiation, good.
Yeah, strangely enough, in this
Okay.
game, the knowledge people have of physical phenomena in Armageddon is really imperfect, so they just refer to any toxins as the rads.
Okay.
And the rads, you've been re-engineered. Your DNA has been reordered using these Mender machines so that you can absorb the rads and survive. Otherwise, if that happened and you were just a normal person in the now walking out in the wasteland, you'd just succumb to the toxins.
Okay, got it. To be avoided. And then I guess we should note that the player skin we have here is Glitch, right?
Yes, this is Glitch.
And it's one of two player skins you can get for pre-ordering Rad. So very cool. I like the tights. Do I see a fanny pack there?
There's a fanny pack.
The big hair.
The big hair. They sort of look back somewhat fondly at these ancient civilizations, not really understanding what they were about, but just sort of see these icons and assume they were of important cultural significance.
Yeah, much like Pac-Man there, which is beautiful. Obviously, the game's being published by Bandai Namco, so taking full advantage of that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. We have you see that we picked up a key there, and the key is floppy disks in this game. So
Brilliant.
The units of currency are those audio cassette tapes you can see in the upper right in the HUD, and then floppies are the keys that activate a lot of the things that you can find.
Oh, nice.
I love the trail of grass and flowers like following you, like both aesthetically really beautiful, but also just like if you end up in an area and you get lost, like the breadcrumb trail is like really useful.
Yeah, because we have this kind of big procedurally assembled world, and it's not a room-to-room assembly, you can get kind of lost. And so early on, we wanted to come up with a mechanic that helped the player find their way, but it also was really neat because it let us explore the theme of the game, which one of the themes is that you're sort of the youth is sort of trying to fix this world that has been messed up by the previous civilizations, right? So your body absorbs the rads, and a byproduct really is leaving this sort of grass trail. And you'll see as we play here, it has more gameplay impact as well, and there's bigger forms of transformation.
Nice.
It's very cool. And then, can you talk a little bit about, since it is a sort of a roguelike game, what is the punishment for, like dying mid-run, and what sort of progression might carry over between runs? Like, what's that like?
Yeah. We see here one of the things he's doing is activating what we call a respirator, and so he's what these do is they'll kick off a bigger form of transformation. And they shoot lasers out of their mouth, pointing towards the gate forward to the next level. And each biome has a different amount of those gates you have to activate. And you can see in the upper right, we've done 1 and 2. So we kind of give the player like a really simple high-level goal.
Yeah.
And don't do a lot of exposition, a lot of tutorialization. We leave people to kind of like explore it for themselves.
Is this our first mutation?
Yeah,
here?
so you see Kevin here has absorbed enough rads that his rad meter filled at the top there, and when that happens, you get a random exo mutation, as we call them. And so each one of these mutations has a different ability. And we give the player has a compendium, a tome of the ancients, where we unlock and they can see all that stuff.
Nice.
And they have different ways of using it. So instead of the player sort of defining their character class, we challenge the player to kind of adapt their play style to whatever happens in each session. So these wings that he got we'll let him cross gaps.
Okay.
But they also kick off a defensive knockback when he uses them, and they can even potentially deflect other things. So it's not quite a defensive mutation, but it's also got some offensive capabilities, because you can say kick off and go up into the air and come back with a ground pound.
Oh my.
So you see one of the things he got here was a fire shield heart, and you see we've got a special fire heart up on our HUD. There's other machines hidden throughout the world, and this underground area he's in is called the Great Underground, and it was left over by the Menders. So in addition to these exterior spaces, we have a whole lot of interiors that are largely optional, and they present like a little more challenge but a little more reward. So inside here there are shops, there's those additional machines that can give you what's called endo mutations, these internal mutations that give you kind of passive benefits. All sorts of stuff that happens over the course of the game.
And just this aesthetically, like a complete departure from what it looks like on top, which is awesome. And like speaking of the aesthetics, like the sort of overall like art direction of the entire game is like awesome.
Yeah. Very
Would you
colorful.
say it's rad?
I would say it's gosh,
Sorry.
yeah, that's one way to put it. No, I was like thinking
How many
like
times will we say rad
Yeah,
in this episode, you guys?
but also just really love like the bold black outlines on the character, which just makes it really readable despite how dense and like active the scenery is.
It gives it almost like a pop art feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when we were kind of looking at art styles that inspired us, and we wanted kind of some of the graphic boldness that was in some of the source material for like 80s graphic novels were kind of a big thing for me, that had some of the European artists, not necessarily the content, but just the sort of rich color and strong graphic design choices. That's stuff that we were really interested in.
Looks great. And so, Kevin, or maybe we can hear a little bit just about like the battle tactics. Like I just saw, an eyeball grow out of that plant, and that was lobbed at an enemy as an explosive, which seems like that was really, really effective. Like any general tips for like surviving on a first run here?
Generally speaking, dodging is going to be your
Okay.
friend. Allows you to avoid attacks like that. And then, we've got these environmental elements that you can use. So if you do it, but sometimes that happens and
They're a
it's
little
over. And also using your full moveset. So the jump kick is good.
Okay.
We've got this lunge attack. And then when you're surrounded by enemies, really useful is this charge attack that'll clear out some space around you.
You always have your bat with you, and so that's kind of the base level mutation. And we've got a bunch of, or base level combat, and we've got a bunch of different combos the player can do to keep it interesting. But ultimately, your mutations are where the strength are, and so you're going to continue to mutate as you play and get more and more mutations that can branch and evolve and be combined with each other. So the bat, bat is important early game, but then becomes a little less important as you become more and more powerful.
Okay. And like speaking of combining things, like was Kevin able to reach that flying enemy to jump kick better because of the wings?
I think in that particular case, our standard jump kick would hit them, but depending on what's going on in the train, that could absolutely be the case.
Okay.
And we sometimes have areas, because part of our game is exploration based, we wanted to keep our traversal interesting. So you see Kevin kind of took a big shortcut there.
Nice.
And if you fall off the cliffs in our game, you take some damage and your bat teleports you back. It's a special bat,
okay.
Right?
Nice.
But the wings give you opportunity to like cross gaps and maybe save yourself from falling as well that you wouldn't otherwise have. Because and it's not so much in the single player game, but in the we don't have a multiplayer, but in our daily challenge mode, our sort of community mode, there's time bonuses, and so a lot of times you're trying to optimize your run time, and things like wings will let you skip parts of the level and really go faster. See, he didn't have to go around; he was able to jump up. So they have some just movement advantages.
Nice. And now the way forward is open.
Yeah, so these gates, we mentioned that these are in the area level, and we get a little guitar solo
That's excellent.
when that opens there. We actually have, I think, 120 guitar solos in the game.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's it. Jordan Rudis, who's a pretty well-known guitar player, came and did all of our solos.
Really?
So it was super cool, yeah.
That's awesome. Like, yeah, I'm also loving just like the overall sort of like synthwave like soundtrack here.
I was going to say, I was chatting with Kevin beforehand. I have loved just in general the influx of just 80s nostalgia lately in games and TV, and the synthwave soundtrack is definitely like, you have to nail the music to really get that feel.
I think so, yeah.
And you guys have done a great job here.
Thanks. Yeah, our composer, David Earls, we worked with him on Headlander, a game that I worked on previously, and he did a lot of 70s synth music for that game. And he really is brought his expertise in 80s music as well. It's something he has a personal passion for.
It fits perfectly when you're fighting like a crab with a 80s punk mohawk as well.
That would be a land louse that we're fighting here. So this first kind of boss fight after the first biome is almost kind of a mini boss fight. You're fighting alpha versions or evolved versions of some of the mutants you see out there. So it's kind of a warm up, and you're it's one of the few times where we really trap a player in a space and make you have to kind of defeat the enemy. Normally, we kind of let the player,
if you want to keep walking, you can keep
walking, or you can really use the environment, or you can get them in a group to try and get a kill streak or an annihilation bonus. There's a lot of options. We try and keep it a lot of freeform improvisation because you never know what enemies or what the world's going to be like, because it's procedurally generated.
Yeah.
But we have these kind of choke points, and this guy's he's a pretty tough one.
He is tough. He's giving us a run for our money here.
We cook him. So when you defeat him, you get to digest the heart of your enemy.
Well, what else would you do with it?
I mean,
that's what I do every day.
The wasteland gives it an appetite. So
yeah.
But in this case, you see what it did is it split his heart. So instead of having a 2-piece heart, we have a 3-piece heart.
So an extra hit, basically? Is that what's happening there? Okay.
So now, we could go back to town if we wanted to, or we could go right to the next, and we give the player the option.
Okay.
And so the town is, you asked earlier what's persistent and what's not, and the town is persistent, right? So the player, when you die, you lose it all. However, the town has a bank, and has an armory, has a farm, has a lot of things that you can contribute to during your runs that will upgrade over time, and any of those investments you've made are there for all time.
So it'll benefit you throughout the game.
Yeah, both the townspeople from a storytelling standpoint, right? But also, for example, if you upgrade your bank to its first tier, you start being able to, well, there's a few different tiers of the bank, but one of them lets you start to access the ATM networks that are out in the wasteland. So you don't have to carry all of your money. You might lose it. You can withdraw some with a penalty, right? They have a fee. So it's not free.
It's an ATM, yeah.
Does anyone, when you get back to town, do they say, well, hey, you have wings now? Or is it just completely normal to be showing back up with mutations?
No, in fact, that's one of the major themes of our game is that, when you are sort of kind of, let's say, making the world a better place, you're becoming something less than human. And we play with that a little bit in the dialogue. So we have written, Gabe Singh-Palmy, our lead designer, wrote a lot of this dialogue. And I don't know how many, we have thousands of lines, really, that all are based on what mutations you have. And so the townspeople all have their own sort of personalities because they are persistent. Now, some of them will say like, "Oh, hey, thanks for taking one for the team," sort of thing, and other people are like, "Please just don't make eye contact with me." We've got a few of them that will cower until you go away. Like, you know, it's an interesting, like, they're not trying to be mean, you know, but it's this
It's a brand new world.
It is. In addition to the townspeople, we've got communities out in the wasteland that you find, and you know, our game isn't really about humanity fighting each other. You know, we didn't want to make a game about murdering other people for the last resources. That's been trod, you know, so much.
Yeah.
And in our case, they're just all trying to make do and trying to hold on to the elements of civilization they want. So, but they do have different reactions to you. So, the community in the first, you see Kevin's using his
Nice.
wings
Good
to
tactic.
knock off.
Impressive.
So the community in this first world are called the Cathode Raiders, and they're obsessed with like 80s technology and stuff. And so they often sell artifacts, which we don't have any at the moment. And you can use these as another method of kind of increasing your strength and giving you unique abilities. But they're a little, you know, if you come up with really extreme mutations, they might have a little strange reaction. But in our second biome, we've got a group of individuals called the Transfigured, who are heavily mutated themselves. So if you show up with heavy mutations, they actually give you discounts in their shop.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's great. One of us.
Yes, exactly.
So in the second, speaking of the second biome,
Yeah.
you know, aesthetically, this first biome is you got that sort of blasted wasteland sort of look, obviously with Rad's own sort of flourish to it. But like, what is that second biome like?
Yeah, I think, you know, our game gets progressively more surreal and more surprising as it goes on.
Okay.
And I think not only on your character, but the biomes themselves. So this one, is exactly what you said, kind of what you'd expect from a wasteland, our take on that. And the second one is called the Hollow Forest, and it's this incredibly overgrown where, you know, cables and machinery are intertwined with trees, and the mutants are more extreme, and there's more unusual types of undergrounds. I don't want to spoil too much.
Okay.
And you see less of that sort of 80s culture, the Ancients culture, and more of the Menders. You see their temples, and you start to they have a quasi-religious structure to their society, and so you start to see more of that.
I love the world building.
That's great, and that's interesting, is because like I'm accustomed to, you know, Double Fine games having great world building and just a really unique style to it, but like, you know, a roguelike is a really interesting. I mean, I can't think of a Double Fine game that has really kind of broached this genre. Like, what drew you to it to begin with to start work on Rad?
And it is something that's pretty new for us, and I think a couple of things. You know, one is what I really like about roguelikes is the surprise. It's the unexpected drama.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that is a bit of a core sensibility for us. You know, in that we try and surprise people a little bit or make unusual choices with some of our world building and characters. And I was interested to see. Yeah. So that little guy there stole his cash and ran off with it.
Got to get him back.
Oh, actually, he stole his consumable, his happy fruit, as we call it.
Happy fruit.
So yeah, I think we were talking, but you know, one of the things that can happen in your grass trail is you'll see things grow in it, and some of those you can pick up.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that sort of just a random occurrence, or can you make it so that you get more of those time to time, or?
Well, yeah, kind of both. So you can
Okay.
see he just saved himself from the cliff fall with his
Yes.
wings. So one of the things is that, you know, over time you might learn where they're more likely to grow, depending on the biome. But they are randomly spawned. But your trail of grass and things behind you can expand over time with different mutations, and that will increase the chance of you pulling those out. And those are interesting because you can eat them for health in this case, but you can also take them back to town. Someone in town is asking for things to grow a farm, and that can have a multi-run impact.
Excellent.
So you always have choices. I think that's really what this genre is about. It's interesting choices. You know?
I like this time slowing down ability. You just
Yeah, he just got chronobellum. So that's he's got a hindbrain that's grown on his lower back there.
Okay.
And that lets them slow down time. And you can kind of see, it's kind of being blurred out with our effect there at the moment, but it's kind of down in that area there.
That's where brains go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, if you need to store a second one.
It's true. We don't want to lose our primary brain. And you know, each of these mutations, we've got 2 of these exo mutations now. We can get a third, and they'll all be visualized in the character, and some of them have combinations with each other. And then, if you keep playing and living, they'll each evolve and branch again in a random direction.
Okay.
So they don't, you know, we try and keep the whole experience of the character's experience dynamic over the course of the game, you know. In addition to you can get bad upgrades, there's consumables, there's artifacts, there's this mutations. There's really just a lot of combinations in our game, like more than, it's funny, it's a really hard game to test because we're trying to balance the game.
Yeah.
And, someone would be like, oh, I got a combination I haven't seen in 6 months. And, we're like, oh, maybe there's something wrong with the data. And we're like, no, we just have a lot of combinations.
Yeah, so you never quite know what you're going to get.
So the gates are definitely on an island over there, and
You
I'm
can see
wondering if
them
I can
there.
fly to
They're
it.
pointing towards it, so
Yeah.
you wouldn't have really been sure of that until you activated all of them.
Right. So, Kevin could be bold and try and fly out to that since we're full health.
Sure.
Let's see.
Since we're full of health.
Since we're full of health, this is what happens. Flap, flap, flap. All right, so we hit the back of it. Kenny, he
Oh,
made it.
wow.
Oh, nice.
So you see,
Impressive.
normally you'd have to go through the underground to connect here.
Yeah, but he got those wings.
So he just saved a bunch of time, skipped a chunk of the level, and he's going to go right in for the full boss here.
Oh
Oh
boy.
boy.
So,
Okay.
and bosses, we're not sure. Okay, so here we go. We have this is
Badonk.
Badonk. So Badonk kind of jumps around a bit and jiggles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair,
So
all right.
we even our bosses are kind of randomly assigned. Like there's choices you learn that could happen.
Oh, he gets little mini ones too.
Yeah. So this boss is kind of creates other little flyers. So you've got to kind of manage your minions. You see he's doing a lot of fire propagation there on the ground.
Yeah.
And Kevin's in trouble a little bit.
And Badonk is objectively pretty disgusting, but also kind of cute. And
Yeah.
I'm really conflicted right now.
That's actually the uncomfortability we wanted people to have, is that kind of like we like things that are kind of charming and memorable.
Yeah.
But I think in the case of a post-apocalyptic thing, I call it the charming apocalypse because there's always something kind of disturbing going on too. But hopefully it's a disturbing that makes you kind of laugh.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's some of the stuff I love is the colorful dystopia, the charming apocalypse. That stuff where it makes it a little more approachable.
Yeah.
It's not all brown and it's not one note of everything is messed up.
If you unpack what's actually happening here on paper, it's pretty grim and like, oh
Yep.
man, this is a rough post-apocalypse. But then you look at it and that visual flair and tone really elevates it.
And I think that we have some interesting subtext to the game. Here's a town willing to sort of send its teenagers off as meat to the grinder to fix their problems. But at the same time, the teens are kind of,
They're all right.
they're all right. Like
Yeah.
there's a little bit of style. There's still a sense of adventure. They're becoming more powerful and maybe finding their place in the world on their own terms. Instead of being locked behind the gates.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to branch out and discover yourself while you discover the world. I would have died a minute and a half ago.
Yeah, Kevin,
absolutely.
you're doing a great job.
Kevin's
Nice
making it look
work.
pretty easy, so
This is not easy.
As the kill streak times 5 comes up.
Now you can see one of the other. We talked about keys and those open chests, and there's a chrome skull in most boss arenas in the corner, and that's what a boss chest. And so if you saved yourself, maybe starved your use of keys in the environment, there's always kind of one of these in the boss arena.
Oh, okay.
And they almost always contain health or something that will help you in a boss fight.
Got
So
it.
it's a choice the player sometimes makes. They learn that, and they're like, well, do I
Hold
use
on
it
to
to get
those
this cool thing
keys.
now, or hold on to it in case I need it in the boss?
If you make it that far,
Yeah.
and so some risk
Decisions,
reward.
decisions.
That's great. So Badonk is a very good name for a boss. How did you come up with it?
Yeah, that's a great point. There were so many puns in this game and so many references. And we of course tried to satisfy some people who are into the 80s, and we have some 80s satire, but we also have some contemporary stuff, and just to play in words, like our mutations were another. You saw Chronobellum was one of those.
Yes.
Time Brain, right? But one of my favorite mutations
Well done.
is okay, take them out.
Yeah.
One of my favorite mutations is called Death Row, and it's a tail that lets you produce eggs that launch babies. So it's a play on words. Death, R-O-E.
Nice.
This is one of my favorite items right here.
He got high tops.
Oh,
So high
stylish.
tops are an artifact, and what high tops do is they give you a double jump. And one of the cool things about our double jumps is that they not only let you get to higher places in the game, but also they have all these cool optional jump flourishes.
Love
So our animators looked at a lot of glam rock. Specifically, I think we spent a lot of time with, I think probably stuff from Mr. David Lee Roth.
Okay.
And all these sort of like weird karate kicks.
Yes.
And so we have all these custom animations, and they change even based on mutation. Too.
Nice.
So,
Very cool.
but it gives you tactical advantages.
That's incredible. So is this? So by beating this boss, is this sort of the gateway to the next biome?
It would be, yeah,
would be,
or
okay.
the town. And so like Kevin's got $43, so he could go back to town, and he could put him into the bank there.
Okay.
Because he's like, oh, maybe I'll die.
Well, I feel like you've described a little bit about what we would do in the town, but is it possible for us just before we say goodbye, just take a peek at the next biome?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. You teased it a bit before, so now I feel like this is a great chance just to take a look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and normally, Kevin's pretty good at the game, we'll say. So it might take you many playthroughs to be able to reach the second biome for the first time.
Yeah, it definitely would for me. So, is there any other? So dodging is a big tip for early on if I want to stick around a little bit longer. And then you mentioned once you get to 3 sort of abilities or mutations that you can sort of branch off from there. Can you also, like, if you see something new, swap it out, or are you kind of like
just rip off those wings?
Yeah,
and get rid of them?
Yeah. So one of the things it's an interesting. We try to balance giving the player some agency of their mutations. While also sort of saying this is just the randomness of the world, right? And so one of the things you can find are these mutations, other machines that let you manipulate your mutations. So one of which does let you toss it out, and it'll give you a random new one. So if you have one that you don't care for, you could do that. Or maybe if you really like one, there's a machine that lets you level it up.
Oh, cool.
Right?
Okay.
And then because through bad upgrades and artifact choices, those can also intersect with mutations in a way. So like for example, if you find a mutation that is good for you have a lot of range stuff, you can get internal mutations artifacts that can augment.
Oh, okay, cool. I think that makes a lot of sense because then it makes every run feel really distinct because you're like, well, these are the 3 I got that run. What will I get this time? With some tweaks in there, but
it's I think one of the things about roguelikes is it's about kind of working with imperfect tools, perhaps to solve the problem. And there's actually a lot of like the stories that you tell yourself and your friends after playing through a roguelite are really fun. We're like, I only had 1 health, but I got the double jump, high tops, and I got to this crazy hidden island. And you can see here we found a shop, and this is an example of the transfigured. So this is a community that's kind of out here, and they're a little less than human, but you can see we've got a little fish head character here.
I love every time you pause, it goes pause.
It's incredible.
We have a ton of crazy announcer dialogue in the game, and that's sort of the voice of the town elder. You sort of learn by watching that cutscene.
Okay.
And so he sort of comments on all the things you do, and he sometimes uses 80s terms because he believes that the evoking of those terms brings you good fortune, that they have words or power.
Yeah.
He's completely wrong, often misuses them in comical ways, but we try and play on that historical erosion of knowledge,
That's so exciting. Well, this was an awesome little sneak peek at the second biome here, but Lee, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us and showing us some of Rad here. So the game is out on PS4 August 20th, not long to wait at this point. Thank you so much for joining us and showing us the game.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. This was great.
PlayStation